Some families break slowly, cracks spreading over years until the foundation finally crumbles. Mine shattered in a single night on a rain-soaked road where my parents left me to die. The math was simple in their minds. One chronically ill daughter equals too many medical bills, too much sacrifice, too heavy a burden. So they made their choice, drove away, and left the girl with the failing body behind them like discarded trash. They never looked back to see the headlights that appeared after theirs faded, never felt the presence that had been watching from the shadows. They never imagined I'd survive. They called me their greatest burden. I became their worst nightmare instead. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Rain pelted the windshield as we drove through the darkness, each drop echoing the heavy silence inside our family sedan. I sat in the back seat, my thin fingers tracing the fog my breath created on the window. Something was wrong. Even through the haze of pain medication, I could feel it. The air inside the car was different tonight. "Dad, where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely audible above the storm and the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers. "It's pretty late for a doctor's appointment." No answer came from the front seat. Just the tightening of my father's knuckles on the steering wheel. White. Bloodless. My mother stared straight ahead, her profile illuminated by occasional flashes of lightning. I hadn't seen her look at me directly in weeks. "My name is Lila Wells. I'm 17 years old, and tonight, everything would change." The neurological conditions started showing symptoms when I was 12. First, it was just occasional tremors, dismissed as growing pains or anxiety. By 14, I needed a cane on bad days. By 16, I'd become familiar with the wheelchair kept folded in our trunk, and hospital staff greeted me by name. My parents' savings dwindled with each specialist, each treatment, each new medication that promised relief but delivered only side effects. "We're almost there," my father finally said, his voice flat and unfamiliar. The car slowed as we turned onto a country road I didn't recognize. Trees loomed on either side, their shadows dancing in our headlights. I shifted uncomfortably, pain radiating down my spine. My medication was wearing off, and the tremors would start soon. "Mom?" I leaned forward, trying to catch her eye in the rearview mirror. "I think I need my next dose early. The bumpy road is..." "You'll be fine," she cut me off, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. A flash of memory hit me, my 8th birthday. Mom had baked a chocolate cake with rainbow sprinkles. Dad had lifted me onto his shoulders so I could touch the ceiling, declaring me the tallest 8-year-old in the county. My brother Caleb, 9 years older and already towering over me, had laughed and presented me with a handmade bracelet of colored string. "One color for each year," he'd explained. "I'll add another one next birthday." The bracelet was still in my drawer at home. He never got to add the 9th color. Caleb had disappeared from our lives when he was 17 after a thunderous argument with our father that shook the walls of our house. I was only 8 then, confused and heartbroken by his sudden absence. Mom would only say he'd gone to find his own way, but the hollow look in her eyes told me there was more to the story. The car lurched to a stop, jolting me back to the present. We were on a dirt shoulder beside the main road, still miles from anywhere. No houses, no streetlights. Just darkness, rain, and the distant rumble of thunder. My father turned off the engine. "Get out," he said, not turning around. I laughed nervously. "What?" "Dad, it's pouring. Is this some kind of joke?" "Get out." Each word was punctuated by the drumming of his fingers on the steering wheel. "Take your backpack." We packed your essentials. Looking down, I noticed a small backpack on the floor by my feet. It hadn't been there when we left home. "Mom?" My voice cracked. "What's happening?" My mother finally turned, her face a mask I didn't recognize. "We can't do this anymore, Lila. The medical bills, the constant care, watching you deteriorate. We've given everything we have." But I'm your daughter," I whispered, cold fear spreading through my chest. "You're a burden," my father said flatly. "We have nothing left. No savings, no retirement, no life outside of hospitals." "The community support dried up years ago," my mother added, her voice mechanical. "People moved on. The fundraisers stopped. The insurance won't cover experimental treatments. We can't watch you suffer anymore. So you're leaving me on the side of the road?" I couldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. Neither of them answered. My father popped the trunk, then stepped out into the rain. He walked around to my door and yanked it open, rain immediately soaking the back seat. "Dad, please," I begged, shivering as cold drops hit my skin. "Whatever I did, I'm sorry." "I'll try harder, It's not what you did," he interrupted. "It's what you are. What you've become." His hand closed around my arm, pulling me from the warmth of the car. My legs, weak and unreliable, gave out immediately. I collapsed onto the muddy shoulder, landing hard on my side as pain shot through my hip. "Your backpack," he said, tossing it beside me. It landed in a puddle, water immediately soaking through the fabric. I looked up at the people who had given me life, who had once tucked me in at night and checked for monsters under my bed. Their faces were expressionless. No tears, no guilt, nothing recognizable as love or regret. "Why?" I managed to ask through chattering teeth. My mother looked away. My father simply turned and walked back to the driver's side. No goodbyes. No words of love, of consolation, not even of regret. Just silence and the slam of car doors. The engine roared to life, and they drove away, taillights quickly disappearing into the stormy night. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. The tremors had started in earnest now, intensified by cold and fear. I crawled toward the edge of the road, seeking shelter in the shallow ditch. Rain pounded my back, soaking through my thin sweater. Headlights appeared in the distance, and hope surged within me. I raised a trembling hand, trying to signal for help. The truck slowed slightly as it passed, but then accelerated away, leaving me alone once more. This couldn't be real. This was a nightmare, a fever dream brought on by medication. My parents wouldn't abandon me. They couldn't. Yet the cold mud seeping through my clothes and the icy rain on my skin told me otherwise. I don't know how long I lay there, slipping in and out of consciousness. Minutes or hours blurred together as the storm continued its assault. My thoughts fragmented, memories of birthdays and hospital rooms, of my brother's laughter and my mother's increasingly distant eyes. Through blurred vision, I noticed headlights far behind me, dimmed as if the car had been parked some distance away. Had someone followed us? Had someone seen? I heard a car door open and close. Footsteps approached, splashing through puddles. A tall figure materialized through the curtain of rain, walking purposefully toward me. Fear gripped me. Was this a Good Samaritan or someone who would finish what my parents had started? I tried to call out, but my voice was lost in a clap of thunder. The figure crouched beside me, shielding me slightly from the rain. A gentle hand brushed wet hair from my face. "It's okay," a man's voice whispered, somehow familiar yet changed by years. "I never forgot you." I struggled to focus on his face, but darkness crowded the edges of my vision. Strong arms lifted me carefully, cradling me against a warm chest. "You're safe now, I promise," the voice murmured as consciousness slipped away. My last thought before blackness claimed me was that I knew those words, knew that voice from somewhere deep in my past, a voice that belonged to bedtime stories and protective arguments, to a brother who had vanished from my life nearly a decade ago. "Caleb?" I whispered, though I wasn't sure the name actually passed my lips before the world faded completely. Warmth. That was the first sensation that greeted me as consciousness slowly returned. Warmth, and the gentle crackling of a fire. Not the cold, wet ditch where my life had shattered, but somewhere safe, dry, and quiet. I opened my eyes to unfamiliar surroundings, a rustic room with wooden walls, a low ceiling with exposed beams, and a small wood-burning stove in the corner casting an orange glow across the space. I was lying on a bed covered with thick quilts, and four stand beside me with clear fluid dripping steadily into a line connected to my arm. My clothes had been changed. I was wearing a soft flannel nightgown I didn't recognize. Clean clothes were folded neatly on a chair nearby. The steady patter of rain still sounded on the roof, but it was a distant, comforting sound now, not the brutal deluge that had soaked through to my bones. On the wall opposite my bed hung several framed photographs. Even from this distance, I could make out what looked like landscapes, mountains, forests, a lake at sunset. Another showed the silhouette of a man standing on a cliff edge, backlit by dawn. "You're awake." The voice came from the doorway, making me start. A tall man stood there, holding a steaming mug in his hands. He was in his late 20s, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscular build of someone who worked with his hands. His brown hair was slightly too long, curling at the nape of his neck, and stubble shadowed his jaw. But it was his eyes that caught me, deep blue and intense, carrying a familiar shape that I'd seen in my own mirror every day. "Caleb?" My voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from disuse. How long had I been unconscious? He moved into the room, setting the mug on a small table beside the bed. "Hey, Lila Bean," he said softly, using a nickname I hadn't heard in nearly a decade. I tried to sit up, wincing as my body protested. Caleb quickly moved to help, adjusting pillows behind my back with practiced ease. "How? When?" I couldn't form complete questions, my mind spinning with confusion. "Drink this first," he said, handing me the mug. "It's just tea with honey. Your throat sounds rough." I took a cautious sip, the warm liquid soothing my parched throat. As physical comfort slowly returned, the reality of my situation crashed back over me. "They left me," I said, my voice cracking. "My parents. They just drove away." Caleb's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. "I know. I saw. You were there? You followed them." He nodded, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I've been watching them for weeks, Lila. I had a feeling something was wrong. But how did you even find me? You've been gone for years. No calls, no letters, nothing." The hurt I'd buried for so long surged to the surface. Caleb looked down at his hands, strong, calloused hands with a small scar across the right knuckles that hadn't been there when he was 17. "It's a long story," he said quietly, "but the short version is that I never really left you. I left them." The words hung in the air between us as my mind raced back to that night. The shouting, doors slamming, my father's voice thundering through the house. "If you walk out that door, don't ever come back." "Dad kicked you out," I said, fragments of memory clicking into place. "But why? What happened?" Caleb's laugh was bitter. "I stood up to him about your medical care. You'd just been diagnosed, and he was refusing to take you to a specialist in Boston. Said we couldn't afford it." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. "I'd saved up some money from my summer jobs. Offered to help pay." He said I was undermining his authority, that I didn't understand what it meant to be responsible for a family. I remembered how tensions had been building in our house as my symptoms worsened, how my father had grown increasingly short-tempered as medical bills piled up. The night I left, Caleb continued, I overheard him talking to Mom about selling the house, moving somewhere cheaper. Somewhere without access to the specialized care you needed. I confronted him, things escalated, and he shrugged. At 17, with no high school diploma yet and $50 in my pocket, there wasn't much I could do. "But that was 9 years ago," I said. "Why didn't you ever contact me?" Pain flashed across his face. "I tried, Lila. I wrote letters they sent back unopened. I called, and your father threatened to have me arrested for harassment. Once, when I was really desperate, I came to your school, but they'd already told the administration I wasn't allowed near you." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All these years, I'd believed my brother had simply walked away, forgotten me. How many times had I stared at the phone, willing it to ring with his voice on the other end? "Where did you go?" I asked. "What happened to you?" I was homeless for a while, he admitted. Slept in shelters when I could, in my car when I had one. Worked odd jobs, construction, dishwashing, whatever paid cash. Got in some trouble. He gestured vaguely to a small tattoo on his forearm I hadn't noticed before. But eventually, I got my GED, found steadier work. And this place. I looked around the cabin. Bought it 3 years ago. It was a wreck then. Took me a year of nights and weekends to make it livable. It's off-grid, hard to find. That's part of why I chose it. You were hiding? Not hiding. Just staying under the radar. It's harder for them to find you if you don't leave a digital footprint. Them? I repeated, confused. Caleb's expression darkened. Lila, while you were unconscious, I made some calls. Checked hospital records, talked to an old friend who works in social services. He hesitated. Your parents didn't just abandon you. They cleaned out your medical fund, the one from all those community fundraisers when you were first diagnosed. And they reported you as having run away voluntarily. The mug nearly slipped from my hands. What? Why would they? Insurance fraud, for one thing, Caleb said grimly. And to cover themselves legally. They're trying to make it look like you chose to leave, not that they abandoned their disabled minor daughter on a deserted road in the middle of a storm. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not just left behind, but erased, rewritten as the villain in my own story. I've been documenting everything, Caleb continued, pulling out his phone to show me a folder of files. The withdrawal from your medical fund, their movements that night, timestamps from my dashcam showing them leaving you on that road. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with controlled anger. I don't want revenge, Lila. I want justice. I felt tears spilling down my cheeks, hot and unstoppable. Why didn't you come sooner? I whispered. All these years. Caleb's composure cracked, pain etching lines around his eyes. I've been searching for you for years. Checking hospital records, joining online support groups for your condition, even driving past our old house hoping to catch a glimpse of you. He took my hand gently. By the time I found you, you were already 17 and I was building a case. I wanted to do this right, make sure they could never take you away again. As the weight of his words sank in, emotions I couldn't name crashed through me, gratitude and confusion, grief and relief, all tangled together in a knot I couldn't unravel. I broke down completely, years of lonely suffering pouring out in wrenching sobs. Caleb moved closer, hesitating only a moment before wrapping his arms around me. He held me as I cried, his own tears falling silently into my hair. I'm sorry, he whispered over and over. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you better. When my tears finally subsided, leaving me exhausted and hollow, I asked the question that had been forming at the back of my mind. What happens now? Caleb pulled back, wiping his face with his sleeve. Now you heal. Physically, yes, but... He gestured to his chest. In here, too. And then, when you're ready, we're going to show the world who you really are. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but the fierce protectiveness in his voice gave me the first glimmer of hope I'd felt in years. As he stood to adjust my fore, I noticed a leather-bound journal on the bedside table that hadn't been there before. What's that? I asked. Caleb picked it up, turning it over in his hands before holding it out to me. It belonged to our mother. I found it hidden in a storage unit they rented under her maiden name. His expression was unreadable. I think you should read it. There's more to this story than even I understood. I took the journal, feeling its weight, not just physical, but the weight of secrets and history I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Rest now, Caleb said, moving toward the door. We've got all the time in the world to figure this out. As he left, I ran my fingers over the worn leather cover. Whatever lay within these pages might answer the questions that had haunted me for years, or raise new ones entirely. Either way, I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in nearly a decade, I had someone fighting for me. I opened the journal to its first page and began to read. The morning sun filtered through handmade curtains, casting a warm glow across the wooden floorboards of the cabin. 3 weeks had passed since the night my parents abandoned me. 3 weeks of slow healing, of adjusting to this new reality where I wasn't alone anymore. "Arms up," instructed Anna, a woman in her mid-30s with close-cropped dark hair and keen brown eyes. "Good. Now hold it for 10 seconds. I raised my trembling arms, gritting my teeth against the burning sensation in my muscles. Anna watched with professional detachment, but I'd come to recognize the subtle signs of approval in her expression, the slight nod, the way the corners of her eyes crinkled when I pushed through pain. Anna Kim wasn't just Caleb's friend. She was a former military medic who now worked at a small clinic 30 miles away. She came by 3 times a week to help with my physical therapy and check my medication regimen. 7, 8, 9, 10. "Excellent," she said as I lowered my arms, sweat beading on my forehead despite the cool morning air. "You've gained 5 degrees of mobility in your shoulders since we started." "Doesn't feel like much," I muttered, reaching for the water bottle beside me. "Healing isn't linear, Lila," Anna replied, making notes in a small medical journal. "Your body's been through significant trauma, and that's not counting the psychological impact of what happened." What happened? Such a simple phrase for an event that had shattered my world. Even after 3 weeks, I struggled to process the reality that my parents had deliberately abandoned me to die. The cabin door opened, and Caleb entered carrying a basket of vegetables, carrots with earth still clinging to their roots, leafy greens, and early tomatoes. "Garden's coming along nicely," he announced, setting the basket on the kitchen counter. "How's the session going?" "Your sister's making good progress," Anna said, packing up her equipment. "But she's impatient." "Runs in the family," Caleb replied with a wink in my direction. After Anna left, promising to return in 2 days, Caleb helped me to the porch where a comfortable chair awaited. Over the past weeks, I'd slowly explored the property, or rather, what Caleb called the sanctuary. The cabin itself was deceptively simple from the outside, weathered wood and a metal roof that pinged pleasantly during rainfall. Inside, however, it was equipped with unexpected comforts, solar-powered electricity, a small but efficient kitchen, and even satellite internet access hidden behind a sophisticated firewall system. Beyond the cabin stretched several acres of wooded land, including a greenhouse where Caleb grew vegetables year-round, a small workshop, and a stream that provided fresh water. Most surprising was the hidden underground room accessible through what appeared to be a root cellar, a space filled with emergency supplies, backup generators, and a sophisticated computer setup. "It's not paranoia if they're really after you," Caleb had joked when he first showed me the underground room. But the comment had landed with a weight that suggested truth beneath the humor. Now, sitting on the porch with a blanket across my legs despite the summer warmth, I watched as Caleb tended to the garden. The physical labor had shaped him into someone very different from the lanky teenager I remembered, all lean muscle and purpose, movements economical and precise. "You never told me how you learned all this," I called out, gesturing to the property. "The gardening, the carpentry, the off-grid systems." Caleb straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "Necessity, mostly. When you can't afford to call a repairman, you figure things out yourself." He walked over, settling on the porch steps. "Plus, I had a good teacher." "The mentor you mentioned?" He nodded, his expression softening with memory. "Frank. Met him when I was working construction in Denver. Older guy, Vietnam vet, lived off the land most of his life." Caleb gazed out at the trees surrounding us. "He caught me sleeping in my car during a snowstorm, dragged me to his cabin. Said I could stay until spring if I made myself useful." "How long did you stay?" "Almost 3 years," Caleb admitted. "He taught me everything: how to build, how to grow food, how to live without leaving a trace. But mostly, he taught me about justice." Justice? Frank had this saying, "Revenge burns you up, but justice lights the way." Caleb turned to me, his eyes serious. "When I found out what happened to you, My first instinct was pure rage. I wanted to hurt them the way they hurt you. Frank helped me channel that into something constructive. The conversation reminded me of the mysterious journal, our mother's journal, which I'd been reading slowly, afraid of what I might discover within its pages. Have you read it all? I asked quietly. Mom's journal. Caleb's expression darkened. Enough to know there's something bigger going on. The entries about the deal they made, I think it has something to do with your medical condition. You think my illness isn't natural? The question had been haunting me since I'd read those cryptic entries. I don't know, Caleb admitted. But I intend to find out. That night, as had become our routine, we sat by the wood stove while a summer storm battered the cabin. The sound of rain on the metal roof created a cocoon of white noise that felt oddly protective. Tell me more about your life, I said, curled up in what had become my chair. You mentioned a failed engagement? Caleb's smile was bittersweet. Hannah. Met her in Colorado, 4 years ago. Smart, funny, worked as an environmental lawyer. He stared into his mug of tea. She wanted normal, a house in the suburbs, kids, Sunday dinners with her parents. I couldn't give her that. Because of me? I asked softly. Because of everything, he corrected. My past, my need to stay off the grid, the nightmares that had me waking up screaming. He sighed. We tried for almost 2 years, but eventually she gave me back the ring. Said she hoped I'd find peace someday. The admission made my heart ache. While I'd been suffering, Caleb had been sacrificing normal life to search for me, to build this hidden sanctuary. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. Every choice I made, I'd make again. His voice was firm. You're my sister, Lila. Family isn't supposed to be conditional. The words hung between us, a stark contrast to the brutal lesson our parents had taught me. Sleep didn't come easily that night. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed of the rainy roadside, of being abandoned. But in the dream, no one came to save me. I woke gasping, sheets tangled around my legs, my body sheened with sweat despite the cool night air. The next day, during physical therapy, I collapsed. The tremors overwhelmed me, and frustration exploded into tears. I hate this. I cried, pounding my fist against the floor. I hate being broken. Anna didn't rush to comfort me or offer empty platitudes. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the floor beside me, her face serious. You know why I left the military? She asked. The question surprised me enough to stem my tears. I shook my head. IED explosion. 3 of my team died. I survived, but not without scars. She rolled up her sleeve to reveal rippled burn tissue running from wrist to elbow. For months, I convinced myself I was broken. Used alcohol to numb the pain, pushed away anyone who tried to help. Her eyes held mine steadily. Then one night, I put a gun in my mouth. I gasped softly. Obviously, I didn't pull the trigger, she continued, her voice matter-of-fact. Because my dog knocked over a lamp at just the right moment. Scared the hell out of me, made me drop the gun. A small smile touched her lips. Stupid, right? Survived war only to be saved by a clumsy Labrador. What happened then? I asked. I realized something important. Survival isn't enough. You can breathe and eat and sleep and still be dying inside. She helped me back into my wheelchair. The real work begins when you decide to live, not just survive. That afternoon, I asked Caleb to take me to the computer room. It was time to start my own investigation into what had happened to me, not just the abandonment, but the years of illness that had preceded it. We need to look into their financial records, I said, determination fueling my voice. And I want to search for information about experimental treatments for neurological conditions. Caleb raised an eyebrow but didn't question my sudden interest. He showed me how to use the secure computer system, explaining the precautions that kept our searches from being traced. Hours blended into days as we built our case. Caleb had already gathered extensive evidence, bank statements showing the emptying of my medical fund, GPS data from the night they abandoned me, recordings of phone calls he'd made to hospitals asking about my whereabouts. I contributed by documenting my medical history, creating timelines of treatments and their effects. As I worked, strange patterns emerged, treatments that seemed to worsen my symptoms, doctors who appeared briefly in my care only to be replaced without explanation. One evening, as I was writing in the journal my mother had left behind, adding my own entries beside hers, Anna burst into the cabin without knocking. "You've been made," she said breathlessly, her eyes wide with urgency. "Two men came to the clinic today asking questions about a missing girl. They had your photo, Lila." Caleb was on his feet instantly. "Government?" "Police." Anna shook her head. "Private." They didn't identify themselves, but one flashed what looked like a corporate security badge when he thought I wasn't looking. My blood ran cold. "How did they know to come to your clinic?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But they knew exactly what you look like, right down to the birthmark on your wrist. They said they were relatives, but—" She hesitated. "But what?" Caleb pressed. They didn't seem concerned. They seemed determined. Like this was a retrieval operation, not a rescue. Later that night, after Anna had left with promises to alert us if the men returned, I found a letter slipped under the cabin door, a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a single typed line. "You were never meant to survive. Stop digging." My hands trembled as I showed it to Caleb. He read it, his face hardening into a mask of controlled fury. "Come with me," he said quietly, leading me to the computer room. He activated a monitor I hadn't seen before, a security feed showing various angles of the property. "Look," he pointed to timestamp from earlier that day when both of us had been at Anna's clinic for my checkup. The footage showed a dark sedan parked at the edge of the property. A figure in a dark jacket moved cautiously toward the cabin, envelope in hand. "They found us," I whispered, fear constricting my chest. "They found the cabin," Caleb corrected. "But they don't know what else is here. Or what we know." That night, sleep eluded me entirely. I sat by the window, watching shadows move among the trees, possibly animals, possibly my imagination, possibly something else entirely. As dawn broke over the sanctuary, casting long fingers of light through the morning mist, I made a decision. I was done being afraid, done being the victim in a story I didn't understand. "Let them come," I whispered to the rising sun. "I'm not the girl they left behind." As morning turned to afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my mother's journal open before me, pages illuminated by shafts of sunlight streaming through the cabin windows. The threatening note we'd received yesterday lay beside it, its message burned into my memory. "You were never meant to survive. Stop digging." But digging was exactly what I intended to do. The journal entries had grown increasingly disturbing as I worked through them. Today, I'd reached an entry dated shortly after my 3rd birthday. "Robert signed the final paperwork today. $30,000 deposited immediately, with quarterly payments to follow. He says this will solve our financial problems, give us the life we deserve." "But at what cost?" The doctor explained the protocols, said risks were minimal, that Elle will be helping other children by participating. But I saw something in his eyes when he mentioned possible side effects. I should have said no. God forgive me, I should have said no. My stomach knotted as I turned to Caleb, who was reviewing financial documents at the other end of the table. "They sold me," I whispered, my voice catching. "When I was just a toddler." Caleb looked up sharply. "What?" I pushed the journal toward him, finger marking the damning entry. As he read, his expression hardened into something almost unrecognizable, my gentle, protective brother transformed by cold fury. "Neurovance Research," he said, pulling up a document on his laptop. "I found their name on some of the medical forms I retrieved from the storage unit. They're a private pharmaceutical company specializing in neurological treatments." "You think they experimented on me?" The words felt surreal leaving my mouth. "Not just experimented," Caleb said grimly. "According to these bank records, Mom and Dad received regular payments until you were 14, right when your symptoms became too severe to hide. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My childhood memories flashed before me, the special doctor visits where I'd be separated from my parents, the strange-tasting medicine that made me sleepy, the weekly blood draws that I'd been told were just to make sure you're growing properly, sweetheart. They used me as a test subject, I said, my voice hollow. And then when the side effects became too severe, they abandoned me. Caleb reached across the table to take my trembling hand. This changes everything, Lila. This isn't just parental abandonment or medical neglect anymore. This is criminal. That afternoon, Anna arrived with news. She'd used her medical connections to track down a former Neurovance scientist who'd left the company under mysterious circumstances 3 years ago. Her name is Dr. Rena Voss, Anna explained, spreading documents across the table. She was leading research on a neurological treatment protocol when she suddenly resigned. No explanation, no new job lined up. Just disappeared from the scientific community until last year when she resurfaced teaching at a community college 200 miles from here. You think she knows something about what happened to me? I asked. Worth finding out, Caleb said. Can you contact her? Anna nodded. Already did. She was reluctant at first, but when I mentioned symptoms matching Lila's, she agreed to meet. There's a catch, though. She insists on absolute secrecy. No phones, no electronic devices, and we meet at a location of her choosing. 2 days later, we were preparing for the meeting when Caleb noticed a black SUV parked on the country road near our property. We've got company, he said, voice tense as he peered through binoculars. 2 men, suits, definitely not local. My heart raced. The same people who came to Anna's clinic? Can't tell, but we're not taking chances. He grabbed his keys and a backpack, already prepared for emergencies. New plan. I'll lead them away from here while you and Anna head to the meeting point. Caleb, no, I protested, but he cut me off. Lila, this might be our only chance to find out what they did to you. I'll be fine. I've got 3 different routes planned and enough survival gear to last a week if needed. His voice softened. Trust me, okay? I didn't find you just to lose you again. An hour later, Anna and I watched from a distance as Caleb's truck roared past the SUV, which predictably pulled onto the road to follow him. Once they were out of sight, Anna helped me into her nondescript sedan, and we took a series of back roads to reach the meeting point, a picnic area at a state park, isolated enough for privacy but public enough for safety. Dr. Voss was nothing like I'd expected. Instead of the stern scientist I'd imagined, she was a small woman in her early 50s with kind eyes and nervous hands that couldn't seem to stay still. As Anna helped me to the picnic table, Dr. Voss's gaze fixed on my trembling limbs, recognition flashing across her face. Phase 3, she said quietly. The tremors, the progressive weakness. You were in the Phase 3 trial, weren't you? I nodded. I think so. Though I never knew that's what it was called. Dr. Voss looked around anxiously before speaking again. I need to know how much you understand already. It's dangerous for all of us to be having this conversation. We know my parents entered a contract with Neurovance when I was 3 years old, I said. They received payments in exchange for enrolling me in some kind of trial. And my guess, Anna added, her medical training evident in her precise terminology, is that the trial involved experimental neurological treatments that caused iatrogenic damage, doctor-induced harm, to Lila's central nervous system. Dr. Voss closed her eyes briefly, as if steeling herself. It was supposed to be revolutionary, she began. A treatment for early-onset neurological disorders. The preliminary animal studies were promising, reversal of symptoms, neural regeneration. But when we moved to human trials, she trailed off, pain etching lines around her mouth. What happened? I prompted gently. The company was under pressure from investors. Results weren't coming fast enough. So corners were cut. Safety protocols ignored. She looked directly at me. There were 27 children in the Phase 3 trial. 24 showed severe adverse effects within 5 years. A chill ran through me. And the other 3? One relocated overseas with his family, beyond our follow-up capabilities. One died in a car accident at 16, though I've always had questions about that. And then there's you. Her eyes scanned my face. You shouldn't have survived this long. The neurological damage should have been fatal by now. Is that why they want me? I asked. Because I survived when I shouldn't have? You're living evidence of what they did, Dr. Voss said simply. And worse, you're old enough now to understand it, to speak about it, to seek justice. She reached into her bag and withdrew a flash drive. I kept copies of everything before I left: trial protocols, patient data, internal memos discussing known risks. It won't bring back your health, but it might help you find justice. As she handed me the drive, her phone buzzed with a text. The color drained from her face as she read it. We need to leave. Now. She showed us the message: unknown car asking for you at your apartment. Claimed to be brother. No brother in your file. We parted ways hurriedly, Dr. Voss heading west while Anna and I took a circuitous route back to the sanctuary. My mind raced with everything I'd learned. Not just a victim of parental abandonment, but a survivor of corporate medical experimentation, a living testament to crimes that powerful people wanted buried. When we arrived back at the cabin, Caleb wasn't there. Hours passed with no word. Anna stayed with me, both of us jumping at every sound outside. Finally, near midnight, my phone, a basic prepaid model Caleb had given me for emergencies only, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Arrested. False charges. Lawyer needed. Storage unit on main ST, key under 3rd rock from north corner. Don't come. Not safe. Anna immediately called a lawyer friend while I decoded the second part of Caleb's message. The storage unit. It had to be where he'd found our mother's journal and the other evidence he'd been gathering. He wanted us to retrieve it before whoever was after us could get to it. The next morning, with Anna acting as lookout, I used the key to open the storage unit. Inside was a filing cabinet containing everything Caleb had collected: financial records, medical documents, surveillance photos, and recordings. At the bottom of the last drawer was a sealed envelope with my name on it, containing legal papers, an emancipation filing, already prepared with evidence of my parents' abandonment, and a petition for an emergency hearing. That afternoon, while Anna helped me organize the evidence, I received a second text: court date Thursday. Be ready. C. With Caleb in custody, it fell to me to take action. I had been a victim my entire life, first of medical experimentation, then of parental betrayal, and now of corporate cover-up. But no more. I need to go to the courthouse, I told Anna, determination steadying my voice. Today. There's an injunction we need to file to protect Caleb and request a formal inquiry into Neurovance. Anna looked uncertain. It's risky. You'll be exposed. I'm tired of hiding, I replied. They've taken enough from me. That night, after filing the necessary papers with Anna's help, I returned to my mother's journal, turning to the final entry, one I'd been avoiding. If she finds this a run, they won't stop until the girl is gone. I tried to protect her, failed her instead. The money's gone. Robert's gambling took it all. They know she shouldn't have survived this long. They're watching. God forgive us for what we've done. I closed the journal, a strange calm settling over me. Looking out the cabin window at the dark forest beyond, I whispered to the shadows, then let them come. The county courthouse steps seemed impossibly steep as I approached them 3 days later, leaning heavily on my cane. Every eye in the small crowd of reporters turned toward me, the missing girl who'd suddenly reappeared with explosive allegations against her parents and a pharmaceutical giant. Are you ready for this? Anna murmured beside me, her steady presence a comfort in the sea of strangers. I nodded, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. I've been silent my whole life. It's time to speak. The press conference had been Caleb's lawyer's idea, a strategic move to create public pressure and ensure my safety through visibility. They can't make you disappear if the whole world is watching, he'd explained. Now, standing before the microphones, I took a deep breath and began. My name is Lila Wells. 3 weeks ago, my parents drove me to a deserted road and abandoned me to die because of my chronic illness. What they, and the world, didn't know was that my condition wasn't natural. It was the result of experimental treatments I received as a child without genuine informed consent. My voice grew stronger as I continued, detailing the arrangement between my parents and Neurovance, the years of mysterious treatments, and the progressive deterioration of my health. I am one of only 3 surviving children from an experimental trial that harmed 27 young lives. The company responsible has gone to great lengths to silence me, including arranging false charges against my brother, who rescued me when our parents left me to die. As I spoke, my story spread like wildfire across social media. #JusticeForLila began trending. Other families came forward with similar stories of mysterious side effects following Neurovance trials. The public pressure worked. Caleb was released on bail 2 days later, the flimsy charges against him crumbling under scrutiny. As we left the courthouse together, reporters swarmed us, but Caleb shielded me protectively, his arms steady around my shoulders. "You did it," he whispered as we climbed into Anna's waiting car. "You broke the story wide open." But our fight was far from over. As public attention intensified, we received word that Dr. Voss had agreed to testify before a federal panel investigating Neurovance practices. It was the breakthrough we needed, an insider with credibility and first-hand knowledge. For days before the hearing, however, Dr. Voss's home burned to the ground in what officials initially called a gas leak. She survived with severe burns, her research destroyed, her credibility suddenly questioned by anonymous sources suggesting mental instability. "This isn't over," I told Caleb and Anna as we gathered in the cabin, now fortified with additional security measures. "They're trying to discredit her, just like they'll try to discredit me." "So we go bigger," Caleb said, determination hardening his features. "National exposure. A platform they can't control or manipulate." The opportunity came through a respected investigative news program that offered us a live interview. As the makeup artist prepared me in the green room, I caught sight of my reflection, pale, still too thin, but with a fire in my eyes that hadn't been there before. "We're on in 5 minutes," the producer announced, poking her head into the room. Caleb squeezed my hand. "You sure about this? Once it airs, there's no going back." "I've been hiding my whole life," I replied. "I'm done with shadows." The interview began with my story, the abandonment, Caleb's rescue, our discovery of the truth. The host, a veteran journalist known for her incisive questioning, listened with growing outrage. "These are extraordinary allegations," she said finally. "What evidence do you have to support them?" It was the moment we'd prepared for. I nodded to Caleb, who handed me the folder. From it, I withdrew the document that had changed everything, the original contract signed by my parents, agreeing to enroll me in Neurovance experimental trial. "This is the agreement my parents signed when I was 3 years old," I said, my voice steady as I held it up for the camera. "They received $400,000 in exchange for allowing an unproven drug to be administered to their toddler." The host's eyes widened as she examined the document. "And you believe this experimental treatment caused your neurological condition?" According to Dr. Rena Voss, who supervised the trial, all 27 children who received this treatment developed similar symptoms. 24 of us experienced severe neurological damage. I'm one of only 3 who survived past adolescence. The interview continued, building the case methodically. When it seemed we had said everything, I surprised everyone, including Caleb, by slowly rising from my chair. "What are you doing?" the host asked, startled. With trembling legs, I stood fully upright, unassisted, on national television. Pain shot through my body, but I remained standing. For years, my condition has confined me to a wheelchair most days. The doctor said I would never stand on my own again. I looked directly into the camera. This is what fighting back looks like. This is what they couldn't take from me, my will to stand up. The moment became the defining image of our fight, a teenage girl, abandoned and betrayed, literally standing up against powerful forces that had tried to destroy her. The following morning, Neurovant's stock plummeted. By afternoon, the Justice Department announced a formal investigation. By evening, my parents' lawyer released a statement claiming they had been misled about the nature of the medical trials. Justice was beginning to unfold, one painful, necessary step at a time. 1 year later, I stood at the edge of the property, watching as workers installed the new sign, Wells Foundation for Medical Ethics and Survivor Support. The sanctuary had transformed, expanded and renovated, but still maintaining the rustic charm and security features that had sheltered me in my darkest days. "What do you think?" Caleb asked, coming to stand beside me. At 29, he looked younger somehow, the lines of worry that had creased his forehead starting to fade. "It's perfect," I replied, leaning on my cane. I still needed it most days, but I could walk short distances unassisted now, a victory the doctors had once thought impossible. In the year since our story had broken open, much had changed. Neurovance had been forced into bankruptcy, its executives facing criminal charges. A settlement fund had been established for survivors and victims' families. My parents had faced their own reckoning, legal charges, public disgrace, and financial ruin. The sanctuary had evolved into something greater than a hiding place. With the settlement money and donations that poured in after our story went public, we'd established a foundation to support survivors of medical exploitation and advocate for stronger protections in clinical trials. Anna had left her clinic job to run our trauma recovery program. Her experience as a combat medic gave her unique insight into helping people heal from betrayal and abuse. The small cabin where I'd first recovered had become her office, while new buildings housed therapy spaces, meeting rooms, and temporary accommodations for those in crisis. "Ryan's session went well today," I mentioned, referring to a 12-year-old boy with symptoms similar to mine who'd come to us 3 months ago. He stood for almost a minute. Caleb smiled, pride evident in his expression. "He has a good teacher." We walked back toward the main house, a larger version of the original cabin, designed to accommodate both our living needs and the Foundation's administrative spaces. As we approached, I noticed Anna on the porch, sorting through the mail. "Letter for you, Lila," she called, holding up a thin envelope. The return address made my heart skip, County Hospice Center. It could only be from one person. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting shaky but legible. "Lila. The doctors say I have weeks, maybe days. Lung cancer. Too late for treatment. I know you won't forgive me. I don't ask for that. But before I go, I need you to know, you were always the strongest person I've ever known. What we did was unforgivable. Your father called it survival, but it was greed, plain and simple. The woman you've become, standing up, fighting back, helping others, that wasn't us. That was you. Always you. Your mother, Ellen Wells." I folded the letter carefully and returned it to its envelope. No tears came, no surge of emotion, just a quiet acknowledgement that some wounds would never fully heal, some bridges never rebuilt. That evening, sitting on the porch as twilight painted the sky in watercolor shades of purple and gold, I asked Caleb the question that had lingered in my mind for months. "How did you know? That night, when they left me, how did you know to be there?" Caleb was silent for a long moment, watching the fireflies emerge from the meadow. "I'd been tracking them for weeks," he finally said. "Their online purchases, luggage, a map to a state where they had no connections. Their sudden interest in selling the house. The way they emptied your medical fund in small increments to avoid suspicion." He looked at me, eyes serious. "I knew they were planning something. I just didn't know what until that night." "You could have called the police," I pointed out. "And told them what?" "That I had a bad feeling." He shook his head. I needed to catch them in the act. So I followed them that night, staying far enough back that they wouldn't spot me. When I saw what they did, his voice caught. I almost ran them off the road. But then I saw you in that ditch, and nothing else mattered except getting you to safety. Why? I asked softly. After all those years, all that time apart, why risk everything for me? His answer was simple, delivered without hesitation, because you were never a burden to me. The words echoed in the quiet evening air, the truth that had sustained us both through the darkest times. The next day, I attended a small ceremony in town where the local council honored the foundation's work. When asked to say a few words, I stepped to the microphone without notes, speaking from the heart. A year ago, I was thrown out to die by the people who should have protected me. I was considered a burden, a problem to be discarded. I looked out at the faces watching me, some with tears, others with resolve. But in losing what I thought was my family, I found my true home. In facing betrayal, I discovered strength I never knew I had. I gestured to Caleb and Anna, standing proudly at the back of the room. And in helping others heal, I found my own path to healing. I was thrown out to die, but instead, I found my reason to live. That night, after the ceremony, I walked alone to the edge of the property. The moon hung full and bright above the trees, illuminating the sanctuary that had saved me. My legs trembled with fatigue, but I refused the wheelchair, determined to stand on my own for these few precious moments. Looking up at the vast canvas of stars, I felt small yet significant, one life among billions, but a life that mattered, that had purpose beyond merely surviving. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind me. Caleb approached, concern in his eyes. "You okay out here? It's getting cold." I turned to him, my brother, my rescuer, my family in the truest sense of the word. "I'm more than okay," I said, smiling. "I'm home." Together, we stood beneath the canopy of stars, survivors of different storms who had found harbor in each other. The road ahead would not be easy, my condition would always present challenges, and the fight for justice would continue. But for the first time in my life, I faced the future not with fear, but with hope. Not merely surviving. Living. Have you ever wondered how much strength is hidden beneath the surface of those society discards as too broken to matter? Someone once left me on the side of the road to die. Now I'm the one changing lives and bringing down empires. If this journey from victim to victor moved you, hit like and subscribe for more stories that expose the raw power of human resilience against impossible odds.